Hello, this is Margarita Monet from Edge of Paradise, and you are listening to the Metal Pit Podcast.
Welcome to the Metal Pit Podcast, where we delve deep into the albums and bands that had a hand in shaping metal. Please visit our website, The Metal Pit, at www.themetalpit.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Metal Pit. And for lots of cool video interviews, video shorts, and audio versions of our podcasts, you can head over to our YouTube channel at The Metal Pit 666. As always, we'd like to encourage everyone to get involved. So if you have any album suggestions for our weekly podcast or any feedback, you can email us at info@themetalpit.org. So this is our very first episode of season number 2. We ended season 1 with a doozy of an episode where Stacia, Blake, and Jim is with us tonight, discussed our top 50 favorite albums of all time. We recommend you check that out to hear our number 1 all-time favorite metal album, which I'm not going to spoil here, but I will say it's not Faith No More, much to the disappointment of our editor-in-chief, Blake. So sad. But yeah, so maybe a bit of a spoiler, not Faith No More. But we're not here to talk about Faith No More as much as we love them, or Blake loves them. Today, we have two very distinguished guests, both colleagues of mine over at the Metal Pit, and very talented writers in their own right. We have Jim and Eric. How you guys doing?
Awesome. Doing most excellent. How are you doing tonight?
Doing good, doing good. I'm excited about this one. Shall we tell everyone what we're doing? Let's do it.
Let's do it.
We're gonna talk about Megadeth. So far, so good. So what? Probably, I think, and maybe you guys can give your opinion on this, but I think it's one of Megadeth's most divisive albums. It's at least the most overlooked album, I think. Um, I don't know why that is because it's a pretty awesome album. But yeah, why don't you guys tell me about your first experience with this album? Eric, take us way back. What are your
All right. Well, let's see. With Megadeth, I've got to say it would have to be the video to Peace Sells, but Who's Buying? I caught that and I was like, man, this is just some pretty deep stuff. What is going on? Their American flags being burned, their troops. It was just really intense. The music was aggressive. You had to zoom in on Mustaine's mouth, that snarl that he emits, and I was hooked, man. That
yeah,
song and that video just impacted me. Picked up the, I'm gonna date myself. Picked up the cassette, and I was floored. Oh my god, it was just awesome.
yeah,
Love every minute of it, man.
definitely. And Jim, do you remember your first time with
Oh yeah, I
Megadeth
mean
or
in early years, probably my junior year of high school, Peace Cells was the first one that I got into. And then, again with the videos and just the story of Mustaine and the whole split from Metallica. And in those days, such a huge fan of Metallica and then a huge fan of Megadeth at the same time. I mean, I think one definitely, you've got Eric said it best, the snarl, you've got sort of the aggressive sort of meanness of Dave Mustaine. He's come out of that. And I think, there's always a lot of animosity there between Megadeth and Metallica fans, but I think they're definitely two different monsters. And I think that Mustaine leaving Metallica, I mean, Megadeth is just so awesome because of it. And I mean, I know, if everything went right and he would have stayed there or whatever. But I mean, the offshoot for Megadeth is just, I mean, it's changed it changed thrash metal music. You have Metallica there who started this off and was going strong, and then you have this
Mhm.
offshoot that came out of that, and I think it spawned a whole new fan base, more aggressive, faster. It was just so cool, and I mean, I fell in love with it right away, just like Metallica.
Awesome? Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. In fact, it's kind of weird because my first experience with both Megadeth was my first experience. So I heard Megadeth before Metallica, and it
Hmm.
was through my dad. Actually, my dad had seen Megadeth on tour. I believe it was with either Dio or Alice Cooper, in like 1986 for Peace Sells. And this was before me really getting into thrash. Like I was on the cusp. Like I was listening to things like Quiet Riot and, that kind of stuff. Hadn't really taken the leap to heavier stuff. And then my
Mhm.
dad got back from that concert and he was like, you got to hear this. You got to hear this. So he threw that on and yeah, they were my first experience in, I guess, heavier metal. Um, and then I remember in high school in shop class, um, I was a Megadeth fan, and I never listened to Metallica. Like this is prior to Justice, and there was other guys in the class who would throw on Master of Puppets, and I'd be like, "Oh man, that sucks. What do you? We got to listen to Megadeth." And there was always a bit of rivalry there, but yeah, Metallica came later for me, but Megadeth was my first. So I have a very, very soft spot or fond spot for Megadeth because of that. Um, so yeah, so far so good. So what? It was released January 19th, 88 via Capitol Records. It was recorded at Music Grinder Los Angeles, and it was recorded with Paul Lanny in mid '87, who actually mixed Peace Sells. And he was originally pegged to also mix So Far So Good, but Mustaine fired him because he was too eccentric. So I read the book, Dave Mustaine's book, and he talked about this, and he said during the recording of So Far So Good So What, they were, or sorry, the mixing, I think they were at Paul Lanny's house, and he lived on some sort of a large property with a bunch of acreage, and he would just go out and peel apples and feed them to the deers when Mustaine and wanted to mix the album. So every time he tried to find him, he was like, "Where the hell is Lanny?" So he'd go outside and be feeding the deer, and the deer, and he said that like, why the hell are you peeling the apples? Like a deer doesn't need a peeled apple. They don't care. Just feed them the damn apples. So anyways, long story short, he ended up firing him. And then they brought on Michael Wagner to mix it, who mixed Master of Puppets. And as it turns out, Mustaine was not happy with the final mix. And quote, he said, Wagner turned everything into a pedestrian effort.
Ooh.
Muddy Phil. Now, I don't know about you guys, but listening back, I would agree with this assessment. I think the original recording is definitely odd, with a lot of the instrumentation getting a bit lost in the mix. As a youngster, I didn't notice or care, but listening back to the original now, I can definitely hear some of those sonic flaws when you compare it to either like Peace Cells or Rust in Peace. It kind of sits on its own in that weird way. But they did remaster it in 2004, remaster remixed, and it's has better clarity, but it sounds very mechanical. It's missing kind of that punch of the original. What do you guys think of the production on this one compared to other Megadeth albums?
You go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, again, it was. I mean, the first Megadeth album, had a really muddy sound to it, and they've all been remastered, which is good. And the first Megadeth album, Killing Is My Business. They blew a lot of their production money, everything but the actual album. So,
Mhm.
I mean, but in a way, I kind of like it. Like I like the original. I have the original. I have the remix, and I mean the remix does musically and does sound a lot better. But I kind of like the little flaws and stuff that happen, and the fact that some of the musicianship does get lost into it, because I think that adds to the charm. Like my favorite Megadeth album is Rust in Peace. I think this would probably be tied for second, or even maybe even a third, but tied for second with Peace Cells. But I like the original recording. I like to go back and listen to it, like on my original CD that, or I have the cassette, but then I got the original CD once it came out, a lot just after CDs were brought out. And I mean, I like that sound a little bit. I like the sound of the older albums. A lot of people, that even Killing Is My Business, it was a bit muddy, a bit murky, but I kind of like that too. And I have both copies of it. And I go back to the old one quite a bit. So the production was definitely a little off, but I kind of liked it. I thought it had charm.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. What do you think, Aaron? Eric?
I don't have really too much to add. I mean, I always factor in the time frame. So 1988, you're not going to
True.
have great compression.
Yeah.
Not everything's going to, the instruments aren't going to necessarily stand out that great from one another. Sure, it could have been better. being that I listened to it, I listened to the album yesterday and not the remastered.
Hmm.
I haven't heard that yet, but I just listened to the original yesterday, and it does have a higher end. Like if
It
you
does,
listen to
yeah.
that and then you listen to some other speed or thrash metal, which I did last week, and some other styles of music in that era, it is a higher end on the mix. So it's
Yeah.
could certainly have a little more like, I don't want to say bass, but I mean a little more like punch to it, a little more
Yeah.
lower, just a little more like mid to low to bottom end, if you will.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. I think it's actually, like you were saying, Jim, I think it was Megadeth's last truly kind of raw effort, because
Mhm.
everything after that was obviously far more polished. The sonic leap between this album and Rust in Peace is huge. Um,
Monumental. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah. And this was actually the first album where other band members contributed to writing, most notably Junior, Dave Elvison, which, yeah, they didn't. Ma- Mustaine wrote the first two albums, and then he allowed the others to step in. He stepped aside as the general and got other contributions. I don't know what those contributions were, but I think you can tell that it's certainly a different album musically. There's a lot of different ideas going on, I think, compared to the first two albums or compared to Peace Cells. Um, and I think we also need to talk about the cover art, which I think is, I don't know, a big pile of shit. uh, it's very ambiguous. I mean, if you look at it, it looks like Vic is on the moon. You can see Earth like off in the distance over his right shoulder. He's also holding like a flamethrower, yet he's wearing all these bullet bandoliers. It's a bit Star Warsy, a bit kitschy for my liking, and maybe a step back compared to the Art of Peace Cells. Would you guys agree with that? Or
Yeah, it definitely
yeah,
has a sci-fi flavor, and I never really thought of it as kind of hokey, but just looking at the album art yesterday, I was like, wow, this is kind of strange looking, a little kind of little spacey, not really psychedelic, but just it's a
yeah,
little
yeah,
campy, a little bit off, and the piece sells just man. I mean, that album cover is just
Yeah.
it's
oh, it's
just
phenomenal.
vicious.
Yeah,
It's complete. Yeah.
I wonder
I
if.
think
Oh,
oh,
go ahead.
I think it would be kind of even this would probably be one of the lazier covers. Like it just seems it reminds me of the Tatooine scene in Star Wars where the
Yes.
stormtroopers are coming
Mm.
up to the land speeder and asking for their identification. As soon as I saw that, I thought of this.
Yeah, yeah, total Star Wars
Oh,
feel
that's
to it.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so let's talk about the lineup. So, um, fired Gar Samuelson and Chris Poland, gone for this album, which, I don't know. As much as I like Chuck Baylor and who is it? Who's the other one? Oh man, I'm
Jeff
forgetting his
Young.
name. Jeff Young. There you go.
Yeah.
As much as I like the performance of those two on this album, I
Mhm.
kind of miss the. Those guys had a bit of a jazzy. I know they were big jazz aficionados. So if you go
Mhm.
back and listen to Peace Cells, you can actually kind of hear that influence in their performances, and that's completely lacking in this one because obviously they're not there. This one's far more straightforward, where like Chuck Baylor just, he's not a jazz, not an out there drummer. He's just kind of a straight up, a powerful drummer, no doubt,
Mhm.
and a solid drummer, but not, I don't think, the talent that Gar was. And the same with Chris Poland. Like that guy, I don't know if you guys ever heard his solo album after he was ousted from Megadeth. I can't remember the name of it now, but fucking
I
phenomenal. Like,
I did. It's really good, and I didn't even think to look for that on Spotify. A buddy of mine bought that CD,
yeah,
but was it like Escape from Polaris or
that's
something
it.
like
Yep,
that? But
yep.
it was a little. It definitely had some like prog kind of speed metal like hodgepodge together. It was good though. I liked it, and like you said, he's more jazzy, whereas a Jeff Young is definitely more of like an alternate economy speed picker. So he's definitely a bit more technical. I think his playing fits the album, but I see where
Yeah,
you're going with if you listen to Peace Cells, there are some like jazzy elements. Like I Ain't Superstitious, that was really obvious, but there are some other nuances in there by Poland. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
definitely
What
agree
Or
what
with you.
Devil's Island would be another one off of there that's got kind of a bit of a jazz rock fusion with it as well. And I think that's pretty evident. I agree with those comments for sure. And I kind of miss Chris Poland, I, it's too bad the way it went down. And as we talk about the songs, there's something in there about him. But like, I agree that Young was probably more of a metal, old school fit for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, it wasn't even Jeff Young that was originally brought in to be the new guitarist. It was Jay Reynolds of Malice who was brought in. But Mustaine brought him into the studio. They got there, and it was immediately clear that Reynolds was out of his league. Like he just kept Mustaine would say, "Okay, show us what you got," and he didn't show them anything. He just said, "Okay." I think the quote from Mustaine was, "Let me call my guitar teacher Jeff Young and get him over here, and he can help out." So they brought in, he came over, and then it turned out that Mustaine was like, fuck this guy from Malice. Jeff Young is the real deal. So Reynolds was out, and then Jeff Young was hired. And apparently they had to work with Jeff to totally revamp his look because he came in looking like a surfer, and they had to work on him to thrash him up a bit, which they did. If you look at some of the promo photos for that album, he has maybe a bit more teased hair going on. Maybe doesn't
Yeah, I
quite
remember he
fit
had
with
like the feathered. Yeah, he had the Adam
yeah,
Curry kind of look going.
yeah, didn't quite fit with the other kind of rough look that Elfison and Mustaine were pulling off at that time. But let's talk about the music on this album. Um, it to me it sounds like they took the aggression and attitude of punk and combined it with the speed and technicality of thrash metal. Like when you compare that to Peace Sells. But again, I think this goes back to the two new guys coming in, especially Chuck Baylor, who wasn't um, quite quite as efficient behind the drums. It just has a very straightforward sound. What do you think, Jim? Do you think it's a bit more
I think it's
punky in aggression?
absolutely and
Yeah.
aggressive. I think, well, Metallica had an album out this year as well too. So I think it has like a lot with Dave Mustaine. He wasn't. I always got the feeling that there was always, he always wanted to kind of come out of the gate strong and fast and heavy and harder. And his contributions to the first Metallica albums were that. And I mean, and then he got kind of sidestepped and they changed a lot of it and that. But a lot of those guitar riffs, right up until Kill 'Em All,
Mhm.
were on there. So I think that he wanted to probably come out of this like a lot different than his first two albums, and that punk vibe is definitely in there. I mean, you've got songs in there that are just they've got that punk vibe. It's so cool, and I think he knew, in his mind, what I think is he probably thought, okay, Metallica is going to go in this direction. I want to go in this direction,
Right.
and really create a divide in the thrash metal genre at that point between those two monsters. I mean,
Mhm.
you've got, Metallica is going to go a certain way. Why don't we go this way and maybe add a little bit of a different? And I like that because what I like about Megadeth over the years is they tweak their sound. I find in every album, it's not all the same. They tweak it, but they just tweak it enough. Maybe Risk would be the one and it's called Risk. They went a little off the side a little bit, but I
Mhm.
still like it. But I find they tweak it as opposed to a total change. And sometimes I think maybe after the Black album with Metallica, that's where they sort of fall short for me. And I always like looking forward to a new Megadeth release, and they tweak it a little bit. I mean, the new Megadeth album is awesome. I love it from last year, and there's a lot of great tracks on it. And again, it's that tweaking as opposed to a total change.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I think Mustaine, he definitely has that has some punk influences. I find it, and of course you're coming from a guitar player here, but I feel with a lot of the Metallica riffs, you have a lot of the down picking, which Hetfield just he does so well. Mustaine does some really cool stuff with the 16th notes, but he also does some kind of groovy stuff and some more syncopated stuff, which I'll touch on this album actually.
Mhm.
I believe on your favorite song, Jason, on this album. But yeah, he Mustaine definitely gives it a different spin. It's kind of punky. There's some grooves. There's just some flat out speed. 200 miles per hour. Yeah, it's definitely a different attitude. Like anybody that says, "Oh, Metallica, Megadeth are the same," it's like, Well, you can tell,
No.
that they're not fans of music. They know they don't know,
Yeah.
they're definitely not, don't know what they're talking about there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I agree. I think the rhythms and leads on this album have a really cool duality to them. Like they're chaotic and lawless, as well as being controlled and nuanced. It's like nothing I have ever heard before. Like even Metallica doesn't do that. And even though it's my favorite Megadeth album, like I'll admit that it's far from flawless. But like what you were saying, Jim, earlier, it's the fucking flaws that I love.
Yeah.
More so than any other Megadeth album. I think it perfectly captures the band in all their chaotic glory. Like I think Dave at this point was probably still reeling from being ousted from Metallica. I think even to this day he's still reeling from it. But at that point he was really fucking distraught. And add to that the unexpected death of Cliff, all the
Yeah.
drugs and partying. It just makes for an album that's full of piss and vinegar. And I think even more importantly, an album that's sort of full of vulnerability. I think Mustaine on this album is at his most vulnerable, and you can hear that in the tracks. And as such, I think he bears his soul in this album, which takes real courage. And I think he explores a lot of his insecurities on this album. We're going to get to the song later, but In My Darkest Hour is an incredible example of this and easily one of Megadeth's most powerful moments. But yeah, it's a really honest album. What do you think about I want to touch on the influence of drugs. They were, I think, at this point in their career, they were really fucked up. I believe they were um, heroin, meth,
Needles. Yeah. They're
speed.
using needles at
Yeah.
this point. Yeah.
Do you think it had any impact on the recording of this album? And if so, do you think it was a positive or negative impact? What do you think, Eric?
I think it definitely was an impact. I remember reading something. I don't know if it was Hip Raider, Circus, could have even been a different magazine. But Mustaine had mentioned that the band was just, they were spiraling out of control with their heroin use. They were like passing needles, even in the studio. It's kind of weird to say if there was like a positive or negative effect, but you would have to, I guess you'd be naive not to notice some of the influences on the album. And I would say that most of them are positive.
Hmm.
It has,
Agreed.
as you mentioned so well, Jason. It has that like controlled chaos. I mean, I feel like the warts kind of add to the personality on the album, and
Yeah,
some of
good way of
that
putting
some
it.
of that's the
Yeah.
drug use. Some of it's what Mustaine's been through. Some of the pain, being kicked out of Metallica, Cliff Burton, the loss of Burton, and he had a relationship too that went south really fast, which I'll touch on in my darkest hour. But I think the drugs certainly had an influence on this album.
Yeah. So
First,
what do you
yeah,
think,
very
Jim?
Yeah.
much so.
I agree. I think, these are our heroes. So, when I was younger, I mean, not so much now, we all know, but, when I was younger, these guys couldn't do no wrong in my mind. And that was part of it. And that's what the grittiness, you know, the constant partying, this is what it was. And I think though that Megadeth, I mean, if you look at like a movie like The Decline of Western Civilization,
Hmm.
you've got the producer that went down there and she creator and she interviewed all these bands. Megadeth was one of them. And I'll tell you, out of all those bands, I mean, 90% of them were probably considered more hair metal. Megadeth was probably the hardest band in there. I think maybe she interviewed Cryptic Slaughter, but you know, interviewing Dave Mustaine was like interviewing this tortured soul that you could
Yeah.
tell they were different than everything else. And I really like that. And that is what drove it to me. And I think I'd hate to say that, drug use made it better, but I agree with Eric that like the flaws with it probably made it that much more grittier. And I think, in a lot of bands that happened with, but in Megadeth, I think it was just the sort of everything coming to a head. You had, like you said, with Mustaine still harboring probably at this point, these 3 records into his solo, his career with Megadeth, that he created from ousted of Metallica. And I think, he's seeing how Metallica just came off a big album with Master of Puppets, and then
Hmm.
they're getting ready to release another one, and And I think everything was just coming to a head. And I think you can really feel that in this album. Then the next album, it seems to be a little bit more of a common, kind of a bit more of a calmer, more professional, probably cleaned up quite a bit, got some better things happening in their lives, and that's what happens. So I think it unfortunately kind of adds to it. Not that I promote that, but it for my listening, it definitely, warts and all, I agree 100%.
Yeah, I liken it to like somebody like Mustaine to somebody like Jim Morrison, where maybe the drugs worked in his favor somewhat, where they might have increased his aesthetic appreciation or improved his artistic techniques or just enhanced his creativity somehow. The first three albums were written under heavy influence. And like you mentioned, Jim, rest in peace. I think they were starting to get cleaned up, but I think there was
Yeah.
still some drug use. But
Oh yeah.
you can really hear the difference between those first three albums to Rest in Peace forward. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is the one album kind of right in the middle. I'm glad we got it. I'm not happy that Dave had to go through all that shit to create this album, but we got an awesome album out of it. And I just have a quick quote from Mustaine about this point. He says, "In the beginning, when me and Junior wanted to intoxicate ourselves, a mix of beer and pot satisfied us. But I was fascinated by the fact that I could become a real junkie. I really wanted it to happen. I wasn't a very interesting guy. I had a problem with everybody. I didn't notice that I was completely ruining my image. For 5 whole years, I was throwing away $500 a day for fresh material. And on that note, a fun fact, well, maybe not so fun fact, but sad fact, I would say, is most of this album's budget went up their noses and in their veins.
Yeah.
And I think it resulted in a lot of corners being cut. Had they not been, blowing all that money on drugs, we might have got a very different album.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Another fun fact. Did you guys know that after leaving Slayer, Dave Lombardo was considering joining Megadeth for the recording of So Far So Good?
Yes, I had read
Yeah.
that. Yes.
Yeah.
I
didn't know that.
I
So
also
thought,
had read that too.
Yeah. And then I think he said after meeting them, he saw how heavily into drugs they were, and he really wasn't into that scene. He quoted many years later saying, "They didn't look too healthy. They looked pretty bad." And like if you look back at those promos or watch videos, I think there's a famous interview with them with Much Music Canada where I think they were on tour for the album, but they were completely fucked out of their minds when they were being interviewed, and they just looked like they crawled out of a sewer. It was just a really really bad look. But yeah, I think it also, looking back on it, I think it worked for them. That image kind of what they were going through, and the image they were, I don't think they were portraying an image, but how they looked at that time kind of ties in with this album. Like the two of them together just fit perfectly. Kind of that gutter look and the music all tied in together. It's just like a really, I don't know, it really has that punk do it yourself kind of attitude to it. So it sucks they went through that, but I'm glad they were turning it around. And also Slash at this time was being considered as the new guitarist of Megadeth. I think this
Oh,
was,
I didn't know that.
That
yeah,
I didn't hear. Okay.
it was a bit before GNR blew up with Appetite for Destruction. GNR was kind of toiling at this time. And I actually have a quote from Slash about this. So he says, I crashed wherever I could. This was in LA, and did whatever came to mind. And there was a point in there when I hooked up with Mustaine. We became friends. He was strung out on smack and crack, and he lived in the same neighborhood. So we hung out and wrote songs. He was a true, complete fucking maniac and a genius riff writer. We'd hang out, smoke crack, and come up with major heavy metal riffs, just fucking dark and heavy as hell. Sometimes Junior would join us. We got along great. We wrote some great shit. It got to the point in our drug fueled creative zone that we started seriously entertaining the idea of me joining Megadeth. Now, could you guys imagine Slash and Megadeth?
Wow.
I don't think so, but I'd give it a shot. I mean, I'd check it out. But
well, that speaks volumes, I guess, to I always had this preconceived notion about Slash as not being a thrash guy, but obviously he comes from that scene as well. So, obviously he could handle those songs. Well, let's get into the songs. So
All
first
right.
track, Into the Lungs of Hell. And I'm gonna do what Blake does here. Played 8 times live since 8 times.
Hmm.
Can you believe that?
Man, it's a short song, but
It's a short
Yeah.
song.
yeah.
Eric, what do you think of Into the Lungs of Hell?
What an awesome combination of riffing and lead guitar. The
Mm.
tapping elevates this instrumental, and don't sleep on those triplets
Oh
with
man,
the drum. Those drums, man! Wow, he's got the kick drums going there. Very cool.
absolutely. And the taps, those taps in that song, incredible. It
Mm.
just takes you to another place. What do you think, Jim?
Oh, it's a wicked instrumental, and I mean, I'm glad Eric went first. He's a musician by trade here, so he knows a lot more about it than I do. But I love, I mean, as a fan, I love it. I love it. You know, they took a little bit of a risk on this one. I mean, they put this right first, and I think it sets the tone for the album. I really like it, and I mean, there's even some synthesized horns in there too, and it's a great start to the album. And you know, I always I a lot of instrumentals or intros, that sort of thing, a lot of people skip. This is definitely one that you do not skip for sure.
Yeah, I think it sets a
Mhm.
really dramatic and moody tone for the album, like right off the
Yeah,
bat. And it just takes you to that place. Like it immediately takes you. You know where this album is going when you hear this song.
yeah,
Interesting fact, they used to play the song live as far back as 85 with Samuelson in Poland. And I believe it's oh, maybe not this one. This song is just, I was going to say it's one of the first song that Mustaine ever wrote after being ousted from Metallica, but it's not. Set the World Afire. The next song is.
that's
But
right.
yeah,
Mm,
Into the Lungs of Hell. I did see a video on YouTube where they played it back in 85. It sounded quite a bit different with Samuelson and Poland on it, but it was cool nonetheless. So that, yeah, that brings us to Set the World Afire. Played 285 times. Jim, what do you think about Set the World Afire?
like you said, this was the first one he wrote. And you know, here it is on the the third album. You know, when he got ousted from Metallica, he wrote it on the bus ride back to LA, and I believe he wrote it with a pencil on a cupcake wrapper,
Yeah,
according to what
yeah.
I've read. Yeah, so
And
that's really cool. I mean, you think about that. I'd love to have that wrapper, but it's so cool. I mean, the track. It's not my favorite track on it, but it is such an aggressive track. I mean, you have that little intro to that 1941 song "Don't Want to Set the World on Fire" by the Ink Spots, whoever they were. But it's cool how it opens up with that, and it's kind of a face melter right off the bat, and I absolutely love it. I mean, it's a great track. I have some other favorites on here, but this would be in my top half of the album for sure.
yeah,
But it's a wicked song.
yeah. I think going back to the writing the lyrics on the cupcake wrapper, fans actually hardcore fans refer to it as the cupcake song.
That's great.
And Eric, what do you think about Set the World Afire?
I'm looking at my notes, and I feel like I should have written more about it. It's a great tune, first and foremost. A barrage of 16th notes, man, begins this inferno of a song. At the 58-second mark, Dave's new rhythm was arguably the most original riff I had heard back in '88. He just made such a statement. It had this attitude, but it had this technical. He showed his technical ability, and again, it has just that snarl of Mustangs.
Hmm.
And you know, you want tempo changes with a snarl. Megadeth has you covered. Dave and Jeff
Absolutely.
also offer some soaring solos.
Yeah,
Love that song.
those two work
Yeah.
well together on this song
Yeah,
for sure. I
Mm.
think it also has one of Megadeth's catchiest grooves ever. The part
totally.
is the lyric that goes, "Distorted figures walk the
Oh yeah,
streets, 1999." I fucking love that part. It's such a
that's
Yeah.
so killer.
yeah, such an
Right there
odd
with you.
groove, but a really cool
Hmm.
groove. Interestingly, there's a lyric in the song where Mustaine paraphrases a quote by Einstein about World War IV, where Einstein said, "I do not know how the Third World War will be fought, but I can tell you what they will use in the fourth: rocks." And Mustaine paraphrased that quote as saying, "We'll use rocks on the other side." So I thought that was really cool,
Oh,
and
okay.
it It made me think about that aspect. World War IV.
Mm.
We using sticks and stones and rocks, according to Einstein and Mustaine. So, and that brings us to the cover song on the album, "Anarchy in the UK," Sex Pistols cover, played 526 times, not surprisingly. I think it was the first single and video for the album. But Eric, what do you think about the inclusion of this cover song on the album?
It's kind of funny, Jason, because when I look back, I enjoyed the song more back in my youth.
Mhm.
Like now looking at it, like I listened to it just yesterday. I'm looking at, okay, they had a cover on each of their first three albums. Mustaine is such an insanely gifted songwriter. I never understood the logic. Maybe that was the record company's their call.
Hmm.
But anyway, this is a solid but not spectacular cover. The video, pretty much kind of what Jason was talking about. The video got plenty of airtime on MTV and probably
Hmm.
much music up your way, which was positive for the band. It's a good thing. It's a decent song.
It's an odd choice though
Yeah.
for a first single. Would you agree?
Yes, you
Yeah.
are 100% correct.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking there. I wonder if that must have been a record company um, choice. I'm not sure, but odd. But I'm with you. I think initially I really loved it when I was young, but now it just seems so pedestrian. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't have the balls of the original at all. When you compare it to "These Boots Are Made for Walking," which I fucking love that cover because it's got a lot of balls.
It's pretty
This,
neat. Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
It's it's yeah.
a bit weak in comparison. What do you think of the song, Jim?
I agree. I think, you know, anarchy's been done so much. These boots were a little bit more, it was a little bit more off the beaten path. And I usually don't like covers, but I like you have Voivod, doing an astronomy de mine, and they pick something kind of off the wall, and I think
Hmm.
that would have been better here. But this reeks of a record company sort of directive because it's a door opener song for new fans, fans
Good point.
Anarchy,
Yeah,
a few years later, Motley Crue did a cover of it. Everybody's done a
Hmm.
cover of it. But releasing it as a first single, I think, cheapens the album a little bit because there's so much, everything else on it better than this. This is my least favorite track. And even though
agreed.
Steve Jones played a solo on it, which is actually kind of cool, but on the flip side to that, I liked it better when I was younger. Oh yeah, as soon as I heard it, I knew it. And then it was just kind of now it's kind of like, and I think they could have put another song. I'm sure they would have had something else written that they could have put in there, but this definitely reeks of a record company directive for sure.
Agreed. Yeah, I got a
Yeah.
quote from Mustaine on this too. It's kind of funny. He said, "I think the best part about that song was the fact that we did have an original living, breathing Sex Pistol come in and play
Yeah.
on it. Sitting on his guitar case, he came in and he wanted $100 and some suction, suction, slang term for guess what?" And Mustaine said, "Dude, it's going to cost you more than $100 to get suction out of us." So we gave him a phone book and $1,000 and told him to go get it himself.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's an awesome story.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
that brings us to Mary Jane. Only played surprisingly 55 times, which
Wow.
crazy to me
Oh
because it
man,
is a
that's
cool
terrible.
tune. Yeah,
Oh,
Jim, what do you think? Mary Jane.
Ah, this is easily my second or third favorite song on the album. I mean, this in my mind could have been a King Diamond song. Like the writing on it, maybe a little bit longer with King on there would have been so cool because it's the exact, it's about a witch being buried alive. And I have a really good
Yeah.
attachment to this because she was buried alive in Loon Lake, and I live on Lake Loon. So I mean, this
Oh,
is
jeez.
this is
oh wow.
awesome. And my wife could easily be the witch. Anyways, she won't. But I mean, I absolutely love this. I mean, the descending guitar, where I've read that they were trying to, it was the act of summoning her spirit, and again, it's got a great story to it, and I think that it's a great doomy kind of, just got that great story to it, and it's like I just liken it to a King Diamond tune, or even this could be a whole album done on a plot of this for sure. And I absolutely like it. It's probably my third, maybe on some days my second favorite on this album, but a wicked song and an underrated song, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, this is definitely a gem. The song has a different vibe than the other tunes on the CD, in my opinion. It has a much more melodic approach with Dave nearly keening in the beginning. I can see where Jim's going with the KD with King Diamond in the beginning. I never would have thought about that, but I could see how that'd be fitting, and obviously the
Yeah.
lyrics. But yeah, Mustaine. He seems already. This is track 4. He seems a little bit vulnerable here as well. But it's a rock solid song. The tempo change and more importantly, the sliding and crunchy power chords are absolutely brilliant towards the end of the song. And when the song ended yesterday, I mean, like you two, I've listened to this album countless times, but the song ends and I'm like, hey, I want more.
Yeah.
It's just over 4 minutes long. I'm like, come on, guys, I'd like to hear some more, but I get it. I've heard this a few times. It's over. But you're disappointed, at least I was.
Absolutely. I definitely agree that it could have been lengthened for sure, and it would have had more impact. I think it's an incredibly moody song and a slow burner. But yeah, one of the coolest tracks on the album. I wonder when this was written, because to me it seems like maybe this was written during Peace Sells, because it would have fit really well with like The Conjuring, Good Morning Black
Good call.
Friday, Wake Up Dead.
Yeah.
It just has that dark tone to it that those songs have. But yeah, we're all agreed. Awesome song. Which brings us to the next one. Awesome or not awesome? 502. What do you got, Eric? 502.
So when a song starts off, pull over, shithead. This is the cops. If this doesn't get your attention, nothing will.
Yeah.
The chorus shows that Dave, with his mixture of confidence and arrogance, his vocals are a perfect fit here. The speedy palm muted pull-offs fit the attitude of the lyrics during that chorus. I mean, they are blazing. This is where I do love popping in those earbuds. I don't know how often you guys do this, but when you have the earbuds in, there are different layers that you can really pick up on. And I'm like, these guys are really guns blazing during the chorus. They're not holding back. They don't care if it's busy, but it just fits the attitude of the song and Dave's lyrics. The early solo provides some really slick tapping. It's a very cool tune.
Yeah, it's definitely a different one for them. I guess thematically. What do you think, Jim?
Oh, I agree totally. This is definitely another face melter, and like Eric said right out of the start. I mean, fast cars. It's the code for drunk driving in California. And coincidentally, I think Mustaine a year later ran into a police car. So, he kind of drunk. So he kind of lived this. So definitely some truth to that after the fact. But, a wicked song. And I agree. Like, I've been spinning this album, obviously I listened to it quite a bit, but over the weekend I've been spinning it, just getting ready. And with my earbuds on, this has the layers. Agree with Eric 100%. This is my second favorite song on the album, and again, another underrated gem. I think people gravitate towards sort of the hits off this album, but that one there is definitely a solid song.
I wonder how much Mustaine likes it, because it's only been played 5 times.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is odd to me, because just as we're talking about, this would be a great song fucking live. Like it just had
without a doubt.
Yeah. So really surprising 5 times. But yeah, I'd love to pick Mustaine's brain about that one. And this brings us to, in my opinion, one of Megadeth's greatest tracks ever written, In My Darkest Hour, played, not surprisingly, 1,365 times. Now you're gonna take the lead on this one, Eric. Tell us about In My Darkest Hour. Your thoughts on this track?
I appreciate it, Jason. This, yes, I mean, I'm with you on this. But not only is this like my favorite piece off of this album, it's a top 3 Megadeth song for me all time. Mustaine's creativity, composition, lyrics, and vocals, they coalesce. I mean, talk about gelling. It's just incredible. The intro utilizes an E minor 9 chord with some single note riffing, which gives us an inkling of what's in store for the listener. The verse rhythm has a slow yet punctuated triplet crunch riff. It's a little bit slower than most of the other tracks on this album. The vocals are spoken from Dave's soul and are spot on. The rhythm guitar echoes the tension within the lyrics. There's some absurdly difficult single note riffing during the bridge, which begins, "I walk alone." You guys know that part.
Yep.
Throughout the main guitar solo, the alternate picking and whammy bar obliteration is some of Mustaine's finest work to date. The delay effect adds another layer to his second solo. And then just something I kind of finished up on. Mustaine, I remember reading this actually back in the day too, but Mustaine had said in an interview that Cliff Burton's death was an inspiration for the song. However, he went on to say that the lyrics were about an ex-girlfriend that didn't care about him, yet he felt she was part of him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I read that too. His former ex-girlfriend, Diana, who he sung about or spoke about a few times. I think he mentions her on Wake Up Dead. And I think in a couple of other tracks later on, Tornado of Souls, Trust, and Wake Up Dead, I think are 3 tracks where she's mentioned. So I think things went pretty sour with that relationship. What do you think about this track, Jim?
Oh, this is one of the most identifiable Megadeth. This is Megadeth. I mean, this is an awesome, awesome song. You know, apparently Mustaine wrote the song in one sitting. So he just went ahead and just wrote it, and it flowed. It's got kind of, for me, it's got kind of a, and saying this with Megadeth is really weird, but it's kind of a bit of a doomish sound to it. And I really like it. I think, you know, they could have done a lot more of this, especially in these earlier albums, but you can really feel sort of the angst he's going through. I mean, it's written, he sings it from the heart. And I think it's 100% truthful. And I think you feel it as a fan. And I think that's why so many people love this song. And it's, as Eric said, it's probably in my top 5 all-time Megadeth songs. This is my favorite song on the album. And I mean, I absolutely love it. When I spin Megadeth, this is usually one of the ones that follow first or second songs that I play. So yeah, it's just an amazing, amazing song.
And it never grows old. You know, I still, when I put
That's
it
true.
on.
So true.
Hey, yeah. Like, how many years has it been now? Do the math for me.
88.
Yeah, 88. So however many years. I remember with my friends and I, we would put this track on and just spin it over and over and over.
Yeah.
And it'd be a group of us and we would just sing it with all the passion that Mustaine had. And even to this day, I still feel that passion in the song when I hear it now. It's like, and it's crazy to me, Jim, that you mentioned that he wrote it in one sitting. Eric, I want to get your thoughts on that. Like, as you mentioned, this song is so nuanced, just musically.
It is. And honestly,
does it blow you away that he wrote it?
It completely blows me away. So the intro alone, I worked on this with a guitar student many years ago when I used to teach guitar full time. And it was probably, I probably had the most fun teaching this song out of any other song. And I did teach sight reading. So obviously there were some kind of mellower, slower moments or just some chords, but this was a fun song to teach. But just at the outset of the song, you have Dave Mustaine playing the clean guitar part, and he has to stretch his fingers way out. I realize this isn't a video, but I'm still doing the shape here. And he does the arpeggiating, and then there's a rhythm guitar underneath of it. Then he's doing these single notes down the E minor scale, and their accents. And it's like, hey, they haven't even started the riff, the pre-verse riff, where they do the descending chromatic run, you know, and it's like, I mean, absolute genius. But Mustaine is a pioneer, you know. He's one of the best. But that's most impressive.
Yeah, let's talk about. Would you call this a ballad? I wouldn't call it a ballad per se. Do you think it fits that category?
You can go ahead, Jim.
It's hard to classify anything Megadeth as a ballad. I'm like, but this is probably the closest thing you could get. You know, like Testament has a few ballads in their catalog. But this is so awesome. And I mean, you know, this would be online, and I hate comparing it, but this would be like Metallica Fade to Black, kind of that sort of nuancy kind of feel to it, although that that they both take off. So I think very similar to that in my opinion.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. I agree.
lyrically, I could see this being labeled as a ballad. I know I saw something years ago where somebody was like, "Hey, I love this in my darkest hour. What a cool ballad by Megadeth," and I kind of shuddered at that. Maybe lyrically, but it's just not one of those songs where they're hammering out 150 miles per hour.
Yeah.
But it does capture, I won't say more emotion because that's not right, but it does have that weight that Mustaine is feeling, and the rejection, and okay, is my life, is your life going to be better when I'm gone?
Hmm.
It is a deep tune.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have to wonder when I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall when Metallica heard this song for the first time.
Yeah.
They had to have been floored.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did we lose here? Like just
Yeah.
genius. That brings us to Liar, which has been played 71 times total. Jim, give us your thoughts, impressions
I,
on
I
Liar.
I really like this track, and you know what? This is, I mean, this is a diss track that Katy Perry and Taylor Swift would probably wish they had written about each other. I mean, like, I got to be honest with you, this is one hell of a diss track, against Chris Poland, and he's brutal in it for the
Oh
lyrically. I
yeah.
mean, he brings in his
Hmm.
parents and everything, but musically, I mean, it's a great track, and it's all about the alleged stealing guitars and selling for drugs or whatever, and stuff like that. And I think musically it's a great song. I think it's another underrated song on this album, and I love listening to this song. It's wicked,
Yeah,
wicked.
I agree. It's one of my favorites. I have two favorites on this album. This is one of them. Eric, thoughts on Liar?
All right, so I'm not going to speak long because I'm 100% sure this is Jason's numero uno. The A minor riff is swift, but is deliberately syncopated. They're playing a lot on the upbeat. It's not as easy as it sounds. Let me share that with you. The chorus is simple and it's in your face, a good thing, I might add. The accents by David Ellefson and Chuck Beller give this song an edge. The rant, which begins start trouble, spread pain, piss, and venom in your veins, is vintage Mustaine.
Yeah.
Jason, it's
Yeah.
your turn.
Yeah, I mean, this track, to me, it hit me the hardest, I think. We all have those people in our lives. We're all guilty of being liars at some point, but you just have those people in your lives, they just blatantly lie to your face. And, when you find out they're friends or loved ones or whoever, you know how much that can hurt. And then just having Mustaine kind of be that voice for you for that frustration. I mean, when I was a teen, this just really, really stuck with me, and I love the track. Musically, of course, but I think thematically, lyrically, it really, really caught my attention. I'm going to go back, Jim. You said there was no holds barred against Poland. I'm going to read a few of the lyrics just so people who may have not heard the song kind of get an idea of just how vicious he was towards Poland. So it says, start trouble, spread pain, piss and venom in your veins, talk nasty, breathe fire, smell rotten, you're a liar, sweat liquor, breathe snot, eat garbage, spit blood, diseased, health hazard, scumbag, filthy bastard, greasy face, teeth decay, hair matted, drunk all day, abscess, sunken veins, rock gut, scrambled brains, steal money, crash cars, rob jewelry, hawk guitars, rotten hell, it's time you know, to your master, off you go. I always wondered who's his master? Who's he referring to your master, off you go. I never quite understood who that he might have been
It's
referring to.
definitely it's definitely different. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder what Poland thought of this.
He
Oh
probably wanted to
man,
cover his face.
yeah, yeah,
Hide under some covers for a few weeks.
yeah. Back then I had no idea this was a diss track. I just I just thought he was just talking about shitty people, which I guess he was. But yeah, definitely one of Mustaine's most vicious vocal performances ever. I think one thing I really like about the song is he tries some different things vocally that maybe he hasn't done before. With the snarl, with the um, with the cadence of his of the lyrics and the vocals, it's really interesting. I think he did a incredible job on this one vocally, one of his finest performances vocally. And that brings us to the last song, Hook and Mouth, played a total of 296 times, which absolutely blows my fucking mind because I love
Mm.
this song. I
That's not
love it
enough.
to no end. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Jim, tell us about Hook and Mouth. What do you think?
Oh, this would be my 1B. My 1B tied with, in my darkest hour. This is a wicked song. I mean, back in the day, dissing the PMRC like this, it's great. I love the drums on it. It's got such a groovy song, and excuse me, it's just awesome. And I love the lyrics in it where he spells out, freedom, and I think that's awesome. It's a sign of the times. And saying it's only been played less than 300 times. I mean, we talk. I think the whole album is massively underrated. I mean, I think possibly it fell between the two big albums of Peace
Yeah.
Cells and
Mhm.
Rust in Peace, and maybe that's it. But this album is just as good as those two, and this song this is probably one of my top 5 songs in their whole catalog. I love it that much.
Yeah, I agree. It's an
Yeah.
incredible tune. Eric, what do you think about good old Hook and Mouth?
Well, my thinking, and looks like I was correct on one part, but my thinking is that Jason and Jim will handle the lyrics. They're definitely thought provoking, and I second that on the chorus section. That's great. That was very very brilliant of Mr. Mustaine there, spelling out freedom. I'll
Yeah.
tackle the music here. I actually played this song in a thrash metal band called Ground Zero.
Wow.
The rhythm playing on this track is aggressive and efficient. I always like the lyrics and how Dave sings. You say you got the answers. Well, who asked you anyway?
Yeah.
The gang vocals during the chorus makes it shine. Another example of how Mustaine's creativity. Him and Young have this call and response solo section, which repeats. It's quite thematic. Young's alternate speed pick solo is a highlight on the album, and Dave's tapping solo complements Young's. What a ripping closer!
Now I want to ask you, Eric, what do you think about Jeff Young as a solo guitar player? Like in of all the members that have been in Megadeth, where does he fall for you? Like as far as his talent and what he contributed to this album?
Now, that's a very good question. Just had a cat sneak down to the basement, so I was multitasking. I was listening to you. So his I think his playing it complemented Mustaines, as we
Yeah.
talked about a little bit earlier. Um, but he was definitely more of a speed picker, where Mustaine does a little more of the legato, kind of the hammer on pull offs. He does some tremolo picking, but Young was definitely an efficient player. He was definitely a straight ahead, hard rock metal lead guitar player. Marty Friedman's always going to be my favorite
Right.
personally. From the as far as the lead guitarist in Megadeth, but I think he did well, and you know what, just to kind of to pile on, like both of you guys had said, this his guitar playing, his lead guitar playing is often overlooked, much like the album is.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, uh, everyone talks about Marty Friedman, but I think Jeff Young is definitely a bit overlooked
Mhm.
as far as his contribution to Megadeth. And yeah, a fantastic guitarist for sure. I
Yeah.
really love this song, the bass and drums on this. It opens up with just the bass and drums, which to me, I don't think I had ever heard anything in thrash where just bass and drums open a song. It was kind of unheard of at that time, as far as I knew. Yet it still managed to sound awesome, and it just really it really pumped the song up, or like it just, it was really, really cool. And I love all the bottom end and low end in this song. Um, yeah, so I think we're in agreement that this album is pretty awesome. Any closing thoughts on so far so good, so what, guys?
Hmm.
Uh, I just think it's I mean, this is a solid album, and I think it does get lost in those three, and it definitely deserves a lot more love. But got to play more of this live. I mean, I saw Megadeth in May, And they only, I believe, only one song off of this album made it there, and that's a bit of the problem as well too.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a lot of these more, I guess you could consider them deeper tracks, although in my playlist some of these, like almost this whole album, would make a top playlist for me, maybe even more so than a lot of the stuff on Countdown to Extinction, which I consider Megadeth's Black Album, but it was much better than the Black Album. But that's what I kind of, it was much more polished. It was radio, it was video friendly. I think I'd rather hear a lot more of this stuff than a lot of that. So.
And what would you rate the album, Jim?
Oh, I'd give it a good 9.5 out of 10. My 10 out of 10 would be Rust in Peace, and even my even Peace Cells. This would be right behind it. But I got to be honest, really, I've played it probably about 6 times this weekend, and I'm really back into it. And I love the fact that I get to do a little bit of due diligence when we do these things, and then it kind of brings me back to like, geez, I haven't listened to this in a while, the whole thing. So it's going to be spinning for me now, probably for the next few months. So I appreciate that.
Awesome. And Eric, how would you rate this album?
I initially gave this album an 8, but I feel like it's more deserving of like a 8.5, 8.5. It's an excellent album. I really like it, and I didn't spin it as much as Jim did. I did listen to a few tracks more than once yesterday, but it did did kind of bring back kind of that feeling. And yeah, it's spoiler alert, it's definitely in my top 10 from albums from 1988. It's a really strong album. And yeah, I don't know, I do wonder with Metallica and Megadeth fans, and sometimes I'm sure like all three of us, we like both bands, but I do wonder if Justice just took so much of the attention away from so far. You hate to think that, but that's just something that just dawned on me. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think they both came out relatively within months of each other. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think Justice is just a monster of an album, and I think that just having the backing from the label that Metallica had at that point, and all the touring they did. I don't know if Megadeth toured as much as Metallica did for Justice on this. Maybe that was part of it. I think Metallica was just a beast that couldn't be beaten at that point. And it did get lost, I think, in its shadow for sure. So Eric, have you seen Megadeth live, and how many times?
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier. The Clash of the Titans show was cool. I'm trying to think if I saw them 4 times, I want to say. And you guys might chuckle. And actually, I really like this band, but so it was kind of a different kind of mixture. They played at a place called Jiffy Lube Live here in Virginia, and so the lineup was Motley Crue was the headliner, Anthrax, and Megadeth. And
how far
I was
back
excited. I was excited. So this is 2000. I want to say 2001.
Right.
2001. So I was excited mostly about Megadeth and Anthrax. I like some of the older Crew, but I was really pumped for those two, really. And it ended up that Anthrax had dropped out. And for about 10 seconds, I was like, oh, man, that just sucks, And then I was like, well, wait a minute. Megadeth's going to play twice as long. I'm freaking stoked over here. So, and they did. Awesome. And they absolutely killed it. And then Motley Crue came on, and they were fine. But I was like, oh, gosh, I wish Megadeth would have played the whole show.
Yeah, no kidding. That's awesome.
How about you guys? How often have you seen Megadeth?
I think the first time I saw them was with Judas Priest on the Painkiller tour. So that would have been for Rust
Good
in
tour.
Peace. Yeah. And then I saw them for Clash of Titans, like you mentioned, with Slayer, Alice in Chains, and who was the other one?
Testament.
Was it Testament? Oh, it was
Testament.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, actually, for me, it was Anthrax in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. So it wasn't Testament, which is odd, but I would have preferred it being Testament. But yeah, I think those are no, I saw them later on too. So maybe I've caught them 3 times, but the earliest was on Painkiller, and they were fucking awesome at that point. Yeah. Jim, the earliest you saw them.
I saw them. I've seen them twice. I've just seen them in May past, and they
Mhm.
were awesome. And I saw them, I think, in 2009 or 2010 for the 30th anniversary of Rust in Peace, and they
Okay.
co-headlined with Slayer for the 30th anniversary of Seasons. So
Oh,
it
okay.
Mm.
Yep.
was, I think it was Slayer. Megadeth ended the show. Slayer, Testament was there. They came instead of Machine Head, and Suicide Silence opened
Oh,
excuse me, opened the concert. So it was a wicked, wicked show, and no, it was phenomenal. Three of my favorite bands with Testament. So, and Suicide Silence was really cool. But
cool.
I've seen them twice, and they're just awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, my rating of this album. I'm gonna have to give it today. I would say I would have given it a 10 back in '88, but I would probably go with a 9 now. Yeah, a 9. Solid album. Love it.
Nice.
All right, this brings us to our top 10 albums of '88. I'm wondering how much overlap we're gonna have here, because there was a lot of great albums this year. A lot of great
Oh
thrash
yeah.
albums, a lot of
Yeah, it
great
was hard
classic
work,
metal albums. Yeah,
but
definitely.
fun.
But fun. Jim, why don't you run us through your top 10 first, starting with number
Okay.
10.
Awesome. Well, I was 17, and it was awesome. What an awesome year. So number 10, I go with Testament, The New Order, wicked album. Love those earlier Testament albums. Number 9, Suicidal Tendencies. How can I laugh tomorrow when I can't even smile today?
Oh, I fucking
Huge
forgot
Suicidal
about that
Tendency
one.
fan. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a huge Suicidal Tendency fan. Love Trip of the Brain and How Can I Laugh? Those are classics.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Great
yeah.
album.
Then I would
Man,
go with
love it.
number 8. I would go with King Diamond. Them. Huge King Diamond fan. This is probably my third favorite King Diamond album. Absolutely love it.
What's your first
Uh,
favorite?
First would be Abigail.
Abigail.
100%.
Okay. Is
Yeah, yeah.
Conspiracy in there?
Conspiracy's number 2.
Number 2. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Phenomenal guitar playing.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Love
Mm.
those albums. Number 7 would be Halloween. Keeper 2. I mean, gotta have Halloween in there. Number 6, Death, Leprosy. Love Death, huge Death fan. This was a wicked album and just was amazing. Number 5, I'm going to go with Maiden, Seventh Son. Another awesome album. And I got to see them on this tour. This would have been the second last time I saw Maiden. And it blew me away. They were awesome. And I love that album. And it's Jason's backdrop, so that's cool too. So
There you go.
I had to give him some love there. Number 4, I got to go with Metallica Justice. This is my 4th favorite Metallica album, but this was the first time I saw them. I saw them, I think, in May of that year, and I mean, they just blew me away. Queensryche opened for them for I think Operation Mindcrime.
Yeah, I
So
saw
it
that
was a
tour.
wicked,
Yeah,
wicked tour. Oh, you saw them?
Mhm.
yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Uh,
Then I would go with number 3, this album, Megadeth. So, I mean, I have a lot of love for this album. Number 2 and number 1 were so hard. So I was fighting over this. Number 2, one of my favorite bands of all time, Voivod, Dimension Hatros. I am a huge Voivod fan. This is my favorite Voivod album. It was my number 11th on my top 50. I
Wow.
just love this album. My number 1 has to go to my favorite Slayer album of all time, South of Heaven. I love Slayer, love this album, but I'm talking like it's my favorite. So that's a 10 out of 10. So is Rain and Blood's a 10 out of 10. I just, for some reason, gravitate towards Show No Mercy's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Rain and Blood's a 10 out of 10. Seasons
Haunting the
is a 10 out of
Chapel.
10.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love. So those are my top of 1988. And I mean, I absolutely love all those albums.
Those are some good picks. Some good picks. Yeah. I'm embarrassed to say I forgot about Suicidal and Voivod. So yeah, they didn't make mine. Eric, what do you got? Top 10.
So, are we allowed to do honorable mentions after we do our ratings?
Sure.
All right.
Let's
So
do it.
this was, like I said, this was quite a challenge. I told Blake, I was like, man, I really have my homework cut out for me. This was quite a year, like you hit on it, Jason. There, a lot of great thrash albums and some other material that was killer. So number 10 for me was Ozzy, No Rest for the Wicked.
Great album. Yeah.
really dig the edge that Zach Wild brings to brought to Ozzy's band.
That was
It's
his
funny.
first album, right? With
It was.
Ozzy? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So number 9, I actually listened to this album today. They were actually going to fall out of my top 10, and I said, nope, can't happen. So it's going to be Anthrax, State of Euphoria.
Great album.
Yeah.
It's a very hyperdrive album. Not as great as Among the Living. There are not many albums on this planet that are as good as Among the Living, but I digress. Number 8, we have King Diamond, Them. Some of my absolute favorite guitar playing on this, in this world, man. So good. King's actually underrated for his rhythm playing. He writes all those riffs, man.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Wow.
The other guys, so whoever else it is, LaRoque, Black, they do the soloing. Number 7, we're definitely gonna have some overlap here, Jim. So we got some How Will I Laugh tomorrow, and I Can't Even Smile today.
Nice.
I was raking leaves last weekend, and I was like, oh, this song is just hitting me, man. The album's so good, beginning to end. Mike Muir definitely has kind of a different delivery. Rocky George, just blistering, man. He's pretty underrated. Let's see, number 6. I feel like I have to almost switch these two up, but I'm gonna stay true to my list. So number 6 is So Far So Good So What. We've discussed this ad nauseum. It's a complete album. I did look at the time length the other day. It's just under 35 minutes, isn't it? It's shorter than what I remember, you know. And I won't say that's a negative, but I was just like, gosh, this is a short album, but it's so good.
You don't think that. You don't pick up on that when listening to it. It's so dense, it just feels longer, I think, you know?
And the funny thing is just the other day I just listened to Halloween Keeper Part 2, and that one's actually at number 5 for me. Just love a lot of the twin harmony playing on there, and Kiski's, he's hitting some notes that are out there in the stratosphere. Number 4, I gotta say, it didn't really grab me a whole lot a couple of weeks ago, but I listened to Justice, and Justice is a monumental album.
Yeah.
You got to give the boys some credit. I wish the bass was a little higher in the mix, but I think it's prog Metallica. I mean, they have epic, lengthy songs. The orchestration's excellent. Number 3, we got to go with my all-time favorite band, Iron Maiden, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. It receives a little too much hate, in my opinion. I get it, synthesizers, but the band sounds great. Production's good. I don't think it's overdone personally. Somewhere in time, I thought it was a little overproduced, but Seventh Son, the songwriting's just, I mean, it's so damn good, man.
Agreed.
The Evil That Men Do, Clairvoyant, the title track. That's a top 10 for me. Number 2, got to get back to a little bit of thrash here. I was listening to this of all places. I was actually at school on my lunch break, had the earbuds in, and had to crank up a little bit of Testament here. The New Order. That is a top 5 thrash album for me of all time.
Wow. Yeah.
Man, you got Eric Peterson, you got Skolnick, the whole band, Chuck Billy. Oh man, what can you say about that guy? I actually met those guys in Baltimore before I saw them on the New Order tour, and man, it was a treat, man. They were awesome. I was 19 years old, and Alex Skolnick gives me a beer on the tour bus. I was like, I'm looking around.
That's amazing.
Are there any cops around? I'm looking around, and I'm like, all right, cool, and all's good. I have an autograph somewhere up in my closet. He signed it, but what an excellent album, man. It's
Very
great
cool.
because it's thrashy. It's got so much aggression, but it has a unique vibe to it. And then they have those clean like segs, these little sections, and this great lead playing. And I love the contrast. I thought it took a lot of guts to be able to do that.
And it's a heavy fucking album too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Give me Disciples of the Watch, man. Let's spin it, rotate it.
Oh yeah.
Keep it going,
Over and over. Yep.
Yeah. And then number 1 for me, they haven't been the most consistent band, but back in the day they were one of my tops. Queenstrike, Operation Mindcrime. This to me is a perfect album. Lyrically, musically, I get it. Some people aren't into the vocals. I always like Jeff Tate a lot.
Jeff Tate's cool.
But he delivers on this album. It's a really I guess it doesn't sound cool, but it's a very clever or smart like prog rock / metal album. But it has some teeth to it. It certainly does. The song "Speak." Remember, I learned that on guitar. But I mean, it's such a great album. I mean, I gave Blake my top album of all time is Iron Maiden Power Slave. It could very well be Operation Mindcrime. I could fill in a few other albums being a number one, but for me, it's going to be Mindcrime for 1988.
That's
it.
A good list. Good list.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah. You guys, a little bit of overlap, but not, you both had some unique picks there for sure.
Yeah.
For me, this was a tough year. I'm coming at it as it's 1988. So I had yet to hear death metal at this point, so I'm not going to include any death metal in my top 10, even though I probably would if I were if I weren't just focusing on that year specifically as me being in that year, if you know what I mean. So number 10 would be Nuclear Assault Survive.
Nice.
Love that
Pretty
album.
Intense.
Yeah, Brainwashed, killer track. I think there was a video for it that used to spin on MTV's Headbangers Ball. Is probably where I first heard it. I remember there's a scene in there where they're sitting in front of Bleecker Bob's Records, and I think it's New York. But yeah, very popular record store. It has that really cool cover of Good Times Bad Times by Zeppelin. Awesome cover. Just a really great Nuclear Assault album. Number 9 would be Manowar Kings of Metal. Fucking love that album. So epic. I mean, from the cover art just some of the songs on there, like Sting of the Bumblebee, the instrumental, Heart of Steel, Kings of Metal, Wheels of Fire, Blood of the Kings, an epic like 8-minute track, the last track on the album. Just a really fucking cool album. And Ross the Boss, man, can't beat that guy. Just love that album. Still love it to this day. Number 8, I don't know what you guys are gonna think of this one, but I fucking love this album, and I get a lot of shit for loving it. But Celtic Frost, Cold Lake. I fucking love that album. Let me explain. Even though it's a much hated album, I think it's the perfect blend of that dark proto black metal that Celtic Frost is known for, but then they obviously mix in that very odd take on hair metal. Yeah. And I think it creates this really dark, moody atmosphere that just it sounds like nothing ever before. Like whoever thought you can mash up, that proto black metal of Celtic Frost and hair metal and make it work. Many people don't think it works, but I think it does. And that's cool. What I like about it is every time I hear it, I don't know if I hate it or love it, which is an odd thing because it's so unsettling. But I can just sit down and listen to it any time of the day. And let's not tell my friends about that one because they tease me all the time about it. But number 7 would be Sword, Sweet Dreams from Montreal, the Montreal Sword. Fucking love that album. I think it's one of their best albums. It has FTW on it, which I don't know if do you guys know that track, Follow the Wheels? Follow the Wheels up.
I do not.
No, oh man, you got to check these guys out. Killer band from Canada. Very underrated band. Number 6 would be Anthrax State of Euphoria. I think this is Anthrax So Far So Good So What. I think it's a really overlooked album.
Well said.
I don't know why. It's got some of their best songs on it, in my opinion. Be
Who
All
Cares
End
Wins.
All. Yeah. Misery Loves Company, Schism. It's
Finale. I love the
Finale.
closing track. That's one of the best closing tracks, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, coming off of Spreading the Disease and Among the Living and I'm the Man EP, those three releases were huge for them. This one was a bit different. Well, a lot different. It was and the album art I don't think really helped it. It has some odd artwork, but I think as a whole package, it works for me. And number 5, Testament. You guys said everything that I was going to say about this album. Just a phenomenal fucking album. I think it's their best album by far. Love that album. And then Slayer, South of Heaven, of course, an incredible album. Jim, you nailed it with every point. I completely agree on that album. Number 3, I think you and I had the same one here, Eric. Iron Maiden, Seventh Son. I love it so much that I got it tattooed on my arm as a birthday gift from my dad when I turned 16.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And my dad got it too. So we both sat down and got the same tattoo, which was that album cover, and still have it to this day. So a lot of fond memories. My dad's not with us any longer, but Dad, I know
Mm.
you're listening. One of his favorite albums, and we saw this tour as well. And I think Anthrax opened for this tour, if I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome tour and great album. Megadeth is number 2. So far, so good. So what? We covered it all here. And number 1 would be Metallica and Justice for All. And I think you nailed it, Eric, when you said Metallica Prague. That's my favorite Metallica, is Metallica Prague. I wish we had more Metallica Prague. I yearn
No
for
doubt.
it every single day. I love this album. Go back to it all the time. And like you mentioned, Jim, I saw that tour as well. It
Yeah.
blew my fucking mind. My dad took me to it, and I couldn't believe the energy of this
Oh, yeah.
of this concert. It just not it's probably my favorite concert of all time. And it was just purely based off the crowd interaction and the band's interaction with the crowd. Yeah, I've never been to a show so energized. It was just unbelievable. And Queensryche were fucking awesome too. They opened.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's it. That's our top 10s of 88. I think we did good, guys.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. Hey, can I
Yeah.
slip in those honorable mentions, or we
Oh
out of
yeah.
time?
Yep. Nope. Do it.
I'll be quick about it. I really won't talk about any of the albums, but yeah, it was kind of I guess it might be a little criminal, but Slayer South of Heaven is certainly one of them. That was a very influential album on me in my youth. Yngwie Odyssey, I felt like there was some really strong songwriting on that one. Longtime Armored Saint fan, Saints Will Conquer. It's a live album. Overkill, Under the Influence.
Yes.
How about some Shred? Manowar, Kings of Metal. This one's more for your, I guess, guitar virtuosos out there. Vinnie Moore, Mind's Eye. It's a very musical album. I highly recommend it. I've been meaning to go back and spin it, but he's in the vein of Yngwie, but I don't know if I'm going to get like slashed or something, but it feels a little more musical than some of the Yngwie stuff. It's not quite all the blistering sextuplets, but it's very musical. It's great, but and just so many strong albums. Crimson Glory were on my list. They got bumped thanks to Anthrax. Transcendence, some really high pitched shrieking on there. I love the song arrangements. Sanctuary, Refuge Denied.
Oh,
kind of like King Diamond on steroids.
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love the songwriting on that one. Flotsam and Jetsam. I guess they haven't aged really that well, but No Place for Disgrace. Pardon me. That's
the wicked album.
The title track's great. I Live You Die. I mean, there are some really good ones on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are definitely some killer honorable mentions. I can't believe I forgot Overkill, Under the Influence. That's another one I got tattooed on me when I was like 16 or 17. So I just got it like a month ago, got it covered up because it was looking pretty haggard. But yeah, awesome album. All right, guys, we're at an hour and a half. We should probably wrap this up. It was fun talking to you. I'm glad we got
Likewise.
to finally. Yeah.
Same.
And hopefully the three of us can do this again. So we're going to wrap it up, and we'll just say, again, please visit our website at the Metal Pit at www.themetalpit.org. And again, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram at the Metal Pit. And for lots of those awesome interviews and video shorts and audio versions of this podcast, head over to the YouTube channel at Metal Pit 666. And yeah, we'll be back with another one next week. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm sure it'll be an awesome one. I think that's it. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Take care. Bye-bye.